Okay, so here we are. I'll read the first paragraph of the 29th chapter of Bereshit, which is where we're up to in Jacob's journey here. Jacob set off briskly and headed toward the land of the people of the east. He came to a place where he saw a well in a field. 3 flocks of sheep were lying beside it. Since it was from this well that the flocks were watered, the top of the well was covered with a large stone. When all the flocks would come there, the shepherds would roll a stone from the top of the well and water the sheep. So when we dig deeper into this section, it may be there's many sections in the Torah that relate to our meditation practice, and most of them have pretty obvious keys to it, like the water from the well, removing the stone from the well drilling, all of these things that we understand as metaphors, and the sages understand as metaphors for drilling through this klipot or moving the klipot away from the waters of the well. This particular one gets the most attention, I believe, in the Zohar. So I'd like to focus on that a little bit and a few other things that come right after this experience at the well. So I'll go right to the Zohar and read it. So when it says that Jacob looked and beheld a well in the field, there is an inner meaning that he discerned the supernal well, which corresponds to the well below. This is borne out by the words, 3 flocks of sheep lying there by it. In truth, the three allude to the south, the east, and the north. The south on one side, the north on the other, and the east between them. So we've been talking a lot since we started these classes, but when we're talking about Jacob, about this thing we call the tree of life, or the Sephiroth, right? And the directions we've been talking about. So there's more directions here. So if we imagine ourselves to be this tree of life, and we know the Sephiroth on the tree of life, Keter, Chachma, Binah, Chesed, Gevorah, these 10 Sephiroth of the tree of life. When we think of the tree of life as ourselves, we're standing facing east. That's what's called the central column. So the south is the right column, commonly known as the column of either wisdom or mercy and kindness. And the north is the left column, commonly known as understanding, strength, severity. So what the Zohar is saying here is these 3 flocks of sheep that are watered by the well is those 3 columns: the south, the east, and the north. The south on one side, the north on the other, and the east between them, or commonly called the central column. All the rivers run into the sea. So they rolled the stone from the well's mouth, meaning they dispelled from it rigidity and harsh judgment, which congeals it, as it were, into stone, from which the water cannot flow. This is a description of what we call klipot, or the shell that prevents the waters, the divine waters from the Holy of Holies within us, our well of being, from flowing freely into our conscious minds, our conscious thinking level, even our inner court and outer court, right? So what prevents that? What creates that klipot? The Zohar is clear. It's dispelling rigidity and harsh judgment. The waters of wisdom and kindness become strong within you, and mercy. And because those rivers within you are strong, of Chachma and Chesed, it prevents the side of severity from congealing the waters. So what happens, we've talked about in the last lessons, is the right side brings the left side into unity. The side of mercy and kindness. The side of the south brings the side of the north into the central column. So we have here an experience of unity. And that unity happens naturally. We experience it that way. It says, observe that Jacob sat by the well and saw the water rising up toward him. And as such, he knew he would meet his destined wife. It was the same with Moses when he sat by the well. As soon as he saw the water rising toward him, he knew there he would meet his destined wife. Observe that in this section, the term well is mentioned 7 times, which indicates the identification of this well with Beersheba. So the number 7 comes up a lot here in these portions. So I'll talk a little bit about that. The obvious thing, if you've taken the Sefer Yetzirah class or are taking a lot of these classes, is that we understand from the Sefer Yetzirah the order, Seder Hashtalshilot, of this divine pure consciousness, this unified field of pure consciousness, coming into what the Kabbalists call the worlds of emanation, creation, formation, and action. How does that happen? It happens with these letters. So we have these numbers of these letters. So there's 3 mother letters, right? Aleph, Mem, Shin. There's 3 father letters, Yud, Vav, and Hey. There's 7 double letters, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Pei, Resh, and Tav. So that's what we're going to talk about today a little bit. And of course, there's 12 elemental letters, which we'll get to when we talk about the children of Jacob. So these 7 double letters, their energies are the energies of the inner court within us. But each one, they're called doubles because they have their transpose colosaurus. So there's the foundation energy of the letter, and then its transpose, the opposite of it, which is part of our life. We have opposites going on all the time in our lives. Like cells are being created and then being destroyed. This is what's going on within us and all around us in nature. So these 7 doubles, for example, Bet is life and death. And those things happen to us all the time, just like I said about the cells. So I will just paraphrase Torah from here on rather than reading back and forth from Torah and Zohar and say, the Zohar tells us he sat by the well. That's another indication. When the Torah or the Gemara or the Mishnah Torah, the Zohar says he sat, it's telling you meditate, sitting and meditating, right? So he sat by the well. And as he sat by the well, the water arose within him. Zohar says a little bit about that. I'm quoting, as he sat down by the well, the waters therefore rose toward him, as important that he would there meet his wife, and the same thing happened to Moses. The inward significance of the matter is that the well rose when it saw its affinity to form with him a union. What does that mean in real terms? It means in real terms that these waters arise within us when they have an opportunity to experience union within us and outside of us. So union of the conscious thinking level with the Holy of Holies within us, our well of being, and also union outside of us, in nature all around us. And in this case, his soulmate, right? So the waters realize that unity is happening. So the waters of pure consciousness, according to the Zohar, that's Ein Sof desire, for everyone to experience that undifferentiated, unified field of pure love, pure consciousness within us and all around us. So, what happens next? I'll cut to the chase. He sees Rachel, and he goes over to Rachel, introduces himself, and then removes, by his own strength alone, the rock from the mouth of the well. Comes back to her, kisses her, and weeps. This is a very visceral thing. The whole Torah portion is very visceral. I mean, it says he heads out briskly. He knows where he's going. He has a desire within him. That kavanah is there. He's going from southern Israel to Turkey without a car, not to mention a jet plane. So this is quite a journey. I think it's estimated to be 400 or 500 miles. So it's a very visceral thing. He sees her and he experiences this enlightenment within himself, this passion. And he tells her, okay, by the way, it's his cousin. So Laban is Rivka's brother. Rivka is Jacob's mother, right? So he sees his cousin, he realized that they're meant for each other, and she runs back and tells her father. So now there's a meeting of Jacob and Laban, right? Laban gets a really bad rap for a lot of the things he did. He's very transactional, and not unlike his sister, not immersed in the energy of Chachma and Chesed. But he does what he has to do. And this whole thing is obviously just a plan, a beautiful plan for unity and understanding like that. So Laban and Jacob meet, and Jacob says, I'll work for you. He works for him for a while. And Laban says to him, I can't just because you're my nephew, I can't just let you work for free. What do you want for your wages? Which sounds like a pretty generous thing. And Jacob says, I want Rachel. And Laban says, okay, work for me for 7 years, and I'll give you my daughter Rachel. So that might seem like a lot, but during that time, and so 7 comes up again. Here's 7. Beersheba means the land of 7 wells, right? So 7 keeps coming back, as I described in the Torah, right? So he works for Laban for 7 years. And then Laban tricks him. And instead of giving him Rachel, whom he's in love with, he gives him Leah. And somehow, I mean, there's all descriptions of this in the Talmud and Gemara and Mishnah and Midrash. How this trick goes down, is beyond me, but I guess it was dark. Maybe they were drunk. I don't know. But they wind up in the tent, and it's the sister. The Torah is clear that when he fell in love with Rachel, there was Leah was also available to him, but he knew Leah had beautiful eyes. It says some translations say weak eyes. Kaplan says beautiful eyes. And Rachel was beautiful and shapely. So some things never change. And that was the outward attraction there. So he was thoroughly in love with Rachel. And he got tricked. So when the morning comes, he realizes it's Leah, and he complains. Midrash says, complains to Leah, how could you tell me? How could you say you were Rachel? She says, oh, well, how could you say you were Esau? So we have a little bit of a pattern, there, a little karma going on there. So he goes to complain to Laban, and Laban says, look, we don't marry off our younger daughter before we marry off the older daughters. So it was wrong for you to want Rachel before Leah. But I'll tell you what, work for me for another 7 years, and you can have Rachel too. The thing is, he's allowed to marry her before the 7 years. So he just wanted it to be after the celebrations for marrying Leah was over, which they did. Then Leah became Jacob's wife as well. So he had two wives, both sisters. It's not against Torah to marry your cousin, but it is against Torah to marry sisters while they're alive. So that's something the rabbis dance around with. Of course, the Torah wasn't given until Moses, but the general mystical concept is that it always existed. And it was taught sort of verbally. So there's some argument there as to really how that happened and why it happened. There is an exception to it happening. But going back to the sevens, the seven double letters and the energies of the inner court, we've been talking about Jacob being a unifier because he is of the central column. We talked about it with Rivka and the Shekinah and the beautiful story of his dream and Jacob's ladder and the directions. So his whole life is sort of this struggle to unify and create union in the tree of life. And it continues with his children. The unification of the children of Israel always has been a very mystical concept that is something that needs to happen for there to be peace on earth. So his life is an expression of what needs to happen like that. But when we're talking about Rachel and Leah, the Zohar explains that when we're talking about Jacob and Esau, we're talking about him in the central column and Jacob being from the side of Severi and Rivka and Abraham being from the side of Hesed and Chakma, and how that whole union came about embodied in Jacob. They tell us now that this 7 and 7 is about the unrevealed world and the revealed world. So Leah is the unrevealed world, the world of the supernal. And Rachel represents the revealed world. So this is really something that's very, very critical in our understanding, in our lives, in our meditation practice. It's not just some mystical story. Because as I said in previous lessons, the physical and the spiritual worlds are integrated. And this is what is an example in Torah of it. Leah, it represents the supernal world, and Rachel represents the physical world. And as such, the 7 and the 7, the unification of the spiritual world and the physical world happen through the marriage of Jacob and Leah and Rachel. And the order was important. So as we've been saying, the left side serves the right side, that we've been saying. So the physical world serves the supernal world. So our actions in our physical world, in our meditations and our charities and our thoughts and our impulses, the things that we do in the world of action serve the higher world. So if we talk about it in terms of worlds, we're saying that Leah represented, so there's four worlds, because Ein Sof, that pure unified field consciousness, is not a world. It's not described as such. It's beyond time and space. The first world is a world called Atzilut in Hebrew, and that is emanation, the world of emanation. And then from there, the world of Bria, which is the world of creation. Then the world of Yetzirah, which is the world of formation, and the world of Asiyah, which is the world of action. We're saying, the Zohar is saying that Leah was the energy and the representation of that energy of the world of Atzilut and Bria, emanation and creation, the highest worlds. And then Rachel was the emanation of formation and action, Yetzirah and Asiyah. It's all coming together. So now, just like he did when he was on the mountain and he put the rocks around his heads and they represented the letters, there's a union of above and below and south and north coming together in wholeness, in oneness. But really critical here, and sort of my last point, we can't think of these things as far out things. We can't, very often, and I see this happen in many, many years of going in being involved with very spiritual people and spiritual groups, and not only being taught by them, but teaching them. That rock that's in front of the well, the hardest part of that rock, the hardest part of that klipot to move is the disassociation part that people have, where they think of some futuristic thing, some futuristic time, something in the heavens that's not related to them, some worldview, some narrative that they're stuck on. That's the hardest part of klipot to dispel, because even as spiritual people and good people, we hold on to that like a security blanket. And it's very difficult to be self-reflective about it. It's so a million times much easier to look at another person in that situation and say, they're stuck on this, they're stuck on that, and that's their thinking. It's much harder. That last piece of that stone is so much harder. And that disassociation piece, what am I getting at? I'm saying that if you think of, you're just waiting for the Messiah to come, where you think of God as some person on a throne somewhere outside of yourself, and that someday you'll attain it as a result of some formula, then that's a disassociation. You don't see that in the lives of the patriarchs. When Jacob is going through all of these things that we've been talking about, they're real life things. They're physical. He read the story how he sits by the well and then he sees Rachel and he gives her a kiss and he weeps. That's not a story of somebody sitting in a yeshiva. And I'm not saying everyone in the yeshiva is misguided. I love yeshivas, they're fine. But it's not, you cannot experience the undifferentiated, unified field of consciousness vis-a-vis the intellect, vis-a-vis a narrative, by virtue of your knowledge. Your knowledge can help you understand the experience of that love. So everything that Jacob's doing is an incredible physical experience. He's not detached. He's on a mountain laying there, looking at the stars. He sets off briskly to go find his wife. He moves a rock from the face of the well. He sees her, he kisses her, and he weeps. All of these experiences are spiritual experiences. There's no reason. You can't have the unity without Rachel. If you just think of Leah, if you're just thinking of the world of Atzilut, the world of emanation and creation, and not formation and action, you're like a lopsided wheel going down the road. So the point is, in our tradition, it's the wholeness that Jacob represents that we seek in our lives. And that does not happen by disassociation. We're responsible for our actions. That's how we learn. Life is our biggest teacher. So when we make mistakes, we experience the karma of them and we learn from them. But it's a very physical thing. A spiritual person like Jacob, when he makes food, he's passionate about it. His soul is in the food. When he plants seeds in a garden, when he takes the tomatoes from the garden, he feels the essence in the tomatoes. When he's working for Laban in the field, he becomes rich, not because he's seeking riches. He becomes rich because he experiences the essence as a shepherd, as a farmer, as a worker. And as that essence grows within him and he sees it, it grows outside of him. And Laban says, hey, this guy's good. I want him for another 7 years. Right? So everything he does is engaging the essence. He kisses his wife to be. It's a visceral experience. So my point is, and we've been going in this direction for a while now. We talked about nature and engagements and so forth. And if we think about the sevens, the law of the seven, how did that come about? Well, the ancients saw that as the sun rose and set, and there was a day where it set and rose, in 7 days, 7 days, seven of these things, there was a change in the phase of the moon. So they could see the moon waxing and waning, right? It goes from the new moon to like being half visible, a half moon, to a complete full moon, and then goes back the other way, a circle. And that they didn't just see it, they felt it. They could experience it. So, and they experienced how it affected their lives. And this became part of the understanding of the sevens. Well, now it's a new moon, but in 7 days it'll be so much of a moon. And then in 14 days it'll be full, and then it'll start waning and it'll be a half moon again, and then it'll come back to a new moon. And we have this cycle that comes up around 28, 30 days. So then we have months. So the Torah tells us the seven is important. And every 7 years, we have a sabbatical year where we let the earth rest. We don't plant anything so that the earth can rest. Every 7 days, we have a Shabbat so that we can all rest. Right? And then every 7 years of seven sabbaticals, we have another time of rest, but it's more of a wholeness, a whole time. And Leah represents that, and Raquel represents the sabbatical year. So these phases, they're important. The sabbatical cycle is a cycle of 7 years. 7 years times seven is the Jubilee cycle. So that's the 50th year. 7 times 7 is 49 in the 50th year. So my point isn't that we need to memorize all these cycles and what they mean. My point is we need to experience the symbiotic relationship we have with nature. And I think as a society, we keep getting further and further away from that. I'm talking with a broad brush, not everybody, obviously. We talked a while back about waking up and saying the blessings, or at least being grateful and getting out into nature before we look at our devices. Same thing when you go to bed. Are we walking in the woods? Are we growing our plants? Can we connect? As I was saying, I find myself in groups, in very spiritual groups, that sometimes disassociate from nature even. It's all about, we're going to study, we're going to obey this law, we're going to do this, or we're going to do that. And nature doesn't matter. God will take care of nature. My body doesn't matter. God will take care of my body. Well, God will take care of whatever he wants to take care of. I have no doubt about that. But we are responsible. If we expect to roll a rock away from the well and to let go of rigidity and harsh judgment and allow the waters to flow within us and outside of us, we need to have an openness to those waters outside of us and inside of us, in both the unseen and the seen, in the world of Leah and in the world of Rachel. That's the unity of Jacob. That's the wholeness of Jacob.